So a lot of things in project management are associated with risk management as well.
And the challenge and the opportunity both for services industry and the hospitality industry is that more than any other sector, the customer has to lie at the heart of the brand. And the customer experience doesn't just shape brands, it ensures their survival or demise.
Especially in the marketing aspect, A is the consumer, and more discerning consumer, more aware consumer, and this barrage of products that are hitting the kind of consumer. With AI, completely changing the consumer behavior kind of a pattern, understanding their pattern. What are the 2, 3, 4 skills you think these graduates should have? Alright, we're just going to have a nice fluid conversation, right? We're going to start with you. For our audience, give us in 2 minutes your life story.
Okay, so life story, started my career with GE, and then from there on, I got involved in project management pretty early in my life, and then worked with GE for 5 years, moved on to IBM, moved on to HCL and Accenture. So this is basically my career trajectory. Now the life story is much interesting than the career trajectory. I met my wife on Facebook, and we got married, and then it's been a good journey from there on. I've founded 2 firms. Both of them are doing work in different domains, but core to what I do is always project management, and that's why mostly focus on how do you use project management and program management in running your businesses more effectively.
Excellent. Anuradha, over to you. You are this media person.
Media person turned educated and loving every minute of it. If I had to sum myself up in one word, Kunal, I would say enthusiast. I think a life lived without passion is not a life worth living. And I'm able to share my passion for brand building and marketing here at ISH, which is something I makes me deeply, deeply joyous every day that I wake up. So I've always followed my passions, whether it's my passion for the written word or the spoken word. I was a radio jockey for 10 years because for me, words symbolize human history and they connect people together. I've been in the corporate world for almost 20 years. My last assignment was with CNN, where I was leading Marcom for South Asia, as well as the global social media for CNN Communications. And then something wonderful called ISH happened to me. And I discovered the joy of teaching and the joy of sharing my passion and my passion for branding with the next generation, which is so essential to build this new cohort of passionate hospitality and service professionals.
Before I go to him, why do students love you so much?
Because they're kind and good, and I think it's a mutual love society. I think love begets love, and they're my heart.
So nice.
I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing for the last about 5 years. The initial 2 years of it, I was with a criminal defense lawyer. So I was practicing in trial courts, high court, and the Supreme Court also. Then I started my own independent practice. And I've been handling criminal matters also, civil matters also. I advise Phonographic Performance Limited, which is a company dealing in music copyrights. Then I'm also on the panel of Municipal Corporation of Delhi. So a lot of civil litigation I handle, sometimes criminal litigation also. That's where my expertise lies. But we were having a discussion about this only. In criminal litigation, people don't trust young lawyers easily. They feel, oh, it's my life involved. I'm going to jail. I'm going to someone who has white hair at least. So yeah, I'm mostly practicing in civil laws with some exposure of criminals as well.
So nice. Why is there a trust deficit with lawyers in India?
I mean, a lot of there are a lot of shady practices going on in courts also, to be very candid about it. So that leads a lot of people to not trust not just the lawyers, in fact the entire the police, the judicial mechanism, the whole system. But I believe there is a lot of change also coming. There have been a lot of developments, but I think that's the main reason why a lot of people don't even feel comfortable approaching lawyers or the police.
Tell me something, Dean Smeetha. When you were putting this entire course together, right? You were talking about operational risk and ethics, and then of course the whole law perspective and corporate law perspective. What was the reason behind that? What was going on in your mind?
So multiple things. I'll tell you how and why I chose these kind of modules, right? So of course, one was which I've already expressed that we spoke to a lot of industry people, right, as to what is it that you're looking at from fresh graduates when they fit into that industry. So that was one part where a lot of people talked about how, of course, skills like data and stuff like that. But however, what was common between most people was business ethics and legal aspects. Now, Kunal, I started my career at a time where we had no knowledge of legalities, right? We were given a very operational training and we were put into the operational world to handle it. Made a lot of mistakes. Realized that not understanding basic legalities, what kind of effect it would have on a business. And when people in the industry spoke about this, I totally agreed on it because I've lived that life. And that is where I thought that anybody who's been practicing law, who understands it from that perspective, could actually at least give a broad perspective of what is it that you need to be aware of legally, right? There's so many rules. And he spoke about music, right? And we know in a hospitality industry, if you don't know, we play music in the lobby. There's so many legalities behind it. We never knew when we went into the industry. There's so many legalities, so many licensing, right? Where we actually make a mess of it if we don't know because we were never told about it. And that is where we got him in to give that legal perspective to our students so that they know exactly where they stand when they make new rules, when they start something new, what are the permissions to be taken, what not to be done.
How to read contracts?
How to read contracts. Absolutely, Kunal. We made mistakes and we learned the hard way. And I'm not going to name the company or anything. We've been sued, right, when we've given apology letters.
And I think there is a slight sense of a very cavalier kind of a thing towards contracts, especially by, people in the operating environment per se. And is the reason, would it be ignorance that I do not understand?
That's a major part of it because, see, you mentioned reading contracts, but before that, a lot of people don't know how contracts are formed or as to whether verbal agreements have any bindingness. Or a lot of people, they make, in my experience, I've seen my clients do this, they make certain commitments over the email and then they try to back out of it by saying there's no written contract, not understanding that contracts could be formed over the email as well. So such small aspects, ignorance is definitely one of the major reasons of it, where people feel that, okay, maybe this is not a valid contract, so I can get out of it. Or the other way around also. A lot of people feel they'll have to comply with certain provisions that may not be legally binding. So ignorance is definitely a huge part of it.
Pretty much, I think your expertise dovetails everybody else, right?
Yeah, totally.
At the end of the day, when you look at from a law perspective, because eventually when you're putting your conversation into, let's say, a piece of paper, right? It could be a mutual agreement, it could be a memorandum, it could be in anything, right? And then you have to ensure that you're absolutely clear in your communication and the other party really understand and both party can go into this together. Excite.
So, in fact, I would like to add, right, whenever the contract is signed, that's where the project management begins, because then you need to deliver the contract. So, contracting is a very, very essential part of project management, and then setting up operations for the hospitality industry or any industry for that matter.
For especially for our viewers, right? A lot of them perhaps have an understanding of project management. Some of them have a deeper understanding. But if you can demystify project management.
Absolutely. So we use the word projects, program, portfolio very loosely if you look at an industry. But if you ask somebody what is the difference, everybody struggles to answer that question. So I think the basic unit is project management. Project management deals with deliverables which you have committed to a client, or for the matter, client can be your internal client as well. So if you're doing a internal project, then your management becomes your internal client, and those deliverables are what make a project. So set of deliverables, and when you're using the resources, you're in a proper manner, you're managing the time, you're managing the scope, and you're managing the budget. So those are the three aspects of project management which are core to everything. And then everything is on a hierarchy. So a collection of projects becomes a program, a collection of programs becomes a portfolio, and the portfolio is what executes an organization strategy. So these are the simple basics. I think we teach these very late in the process. Every organization needs project management, is doing project management in some form or the other, whether they realize it, whether they structure it, but they're still doing it. So might as well do it properly.
So do you believe, because project management at the end of the day is about execution, about a certain set of ideas, and you put it into fruition, right? Should it be taught, get a live project actually from a company, and then should it be facilitated? Or let's understand the framework first, let's understand the platform around that project, and then you can apply it in a live environment. How do you think we should go about?
That's a very interesting question, Kunal. I think understanding the framework lays the foundation. It gives you a lens and a perspective to look at things. If you Let me give you an example. If you take a student who's just finished graduation and put them into a live environment and say, do this project, that person would not know where to start. But you have the foundations, you have the knowledge, and you have the framework in your mind. At least you have the basics in place. You say, okay, if I need to do the project, what is the scope? What are the deliverables I need to deliver? Do I make a work breakdown structure and list down all the activities? And then how much time am I going to take? What is the material or resource requirement which is there, so I can estimate the budget which is required to. What do I have funding for this project? At least you have that lens to start with. Everything else is on the job.
Yeah, and it's so relevant, especially
relevant,
in an intensive operating environment, right? Give us a sense of that.
So, okay, I'm going to answer everything in a very different manner, right? And I'm going to use this line which we say that we are not our users, right? And we need to understand this, right? Whether we are designing operations, whether we are in an operational environment, or whether we are selling that service, there has to be a plan in place, right? And project management comes in there, right? Simple thing. I mean, if you're talking about just a QSR setup, right, and you're in operational setup, if the process is not in place, you can never deliver, right? So they will break it down into, the framework might break it down into the material used or the steps to be followed. Those nitty-gritties are worked down actually in the project management phase. So in an operational environment, if you've not planned your project very well, the project, I mean, that project of the QSR is never going to be successful.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you break it down further granularly, for every aspect that you just spoke about, there is a binding contract,
There is a binding
or
contract.
some kind of a stuff behind which is working to ensure that the project is on.
Penalties for that matter, right? So contracts have penalties. If you don't deliver on time, you'll get hit by a penalty, which is a direct impact to the bottom line of the organization. So those are the things. And even smaller things like, how do you prepare a budget? We don't talk about that. How do you prepare a project budget? So what do you do? If you give a project budget to somebody, you say, they will just add up all the costs and say, this is the project budget. But that's not the project budget. Have you looked at the contingencies? Have you added variations which are going to happen? And I was having a conversation with Nipun just before this meeting, and we talked, and Anuradha as well, that we are living in a VUCA world. Variable, uncertain, ambiguous, complex world. in this world, if you're not building in contingencies in your budget, how are you going to execute? Anything which goes wrong, any black swan event happens, and your project is out of the window, and you cannot deliver. So these are the things, these are the lenses which we need to give people to look at.
When you do you work with a lot of startups?
Not a lot of startups, but a lot of big company. I mean, you can't call them startups now, but they've been into operation for a long time. But even then, I see a lot of people not understanding how their failures could impact, or failures might not be the right word, but let's say shortcomings in terms of any responsibility that they've undertaken, or any contractual obligation that they have. Sometimes the shortcomings may not have that big of a fallout, but a lot of times it could be devastating as well. Which is why a lot of companies fight even the smaller claims so as to not, let's say, set a precedent, because the fallout is not restricted to that particular contract, but a larger.
So pretty much what we're kind of also understanding when you look at, let's say, the law aspect of it, and of course there is a degree of lawness as well, right? Or when you take a project, shouldn't this be ideally be introduced very early on in curriculums? And I'm even going back into, let's say, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, from that perspective.
Project management is there in every aspect. When you get out of your house and you get into a car, you're doing a mini project. Your deliverable is getting to the office. You plan out the routes. You do it subconsciously because you do it. Your muscle memory kicks in and you're doing it. But you're doing project and you're taking a risk. It's a lot of things in project management are associated with risk management as well, which is a core thing. How do you manage risk associated? How do you manage the uncertainty of unknowns? And the only way you can manage it is if you're thinking about it and having a plan around it. Most of the time, and especially in India, and I'm not saying this in a very demeaning way, because I'm saying a lot of things work on jugaad. That jugaad has helped us cut down costs, go to the moon in fraction of the cost. All of that is great. Jugaad encourages innovation. However, even jugaad needs a little bit of planning. You cannot wing it all the time. And I think, especially in our country, it is a big challenge. There is a big gap in understanding that we tend to wing it. We talk about agile all the time. Most of the time, people think agile is winging it. But we don't realize agile is actually planning more detail for the near term and then having a broad milestone for the longer term.
Tell me, would you call a project a skill or a mindset?
Well, it's both actually. If you develop that skill, you will develop the mindset. The skill comes first. When you practice the skill, the mindset develops automatically. Now, I've been doing project management, program management, portfolio management, advisory for 20 years. I can talk about this in my sleep. I can talk about it in a manner which will appeal to the audience. However,
because it's a skill, right, it needs to be practiced. And when you practice it more and more, it kind of grows on you and it becomes a way of life.
Absolutely. And that reminds me, you said, Gallup says that everybody has around 36 top strengths. Not top strength, 36 strengths, or they call it talents. But you only have 5 top talents. There are 5 things which you have, which you use to deliver. Now, project management on the other side is a skill which everybody should have, and it's industry agnostic.
So it's pretty much like a life skill.
It's life skill. I manage my marriage.
Yeah.
So this is a very interesting, and my wife will kill me for sharing the story.
No, that's fine, and we place that on record.
So when I met my wife, usually people go on dates and then they figure it out, and I did it the other way. I said, you know what, we're meeting. I don't want to do any complicated stuff. Let's go on 4 dates, decide whether we are compatible, and then that's the milestone at which
that's the project management which you did.
There was project management happening
like
at that stage also.
I like. Look where it turned up, right? Yeah.
And at the end of 4 dates, she said no. She said, "Buzz off. And this is not the way. This is not your project that you can manage the wedding." So I had to go and do some coursing.
Oh, sorry. Then you had to do some jugaad. Then you had to do some jugaad. Let's digress. Anuradha, to you, right? Lot of us get confused with the terminology product marketing, service marketing, digital marketing. You're an expert, right? Give us a sense.
I would say they're all arms of marketing and it all goes towards building a brand. Branding is important in any industry, but especially ours, because ultimately all it's leading towards is the guest experience and the customer experience. Whether I'm engaging with my customer who is a baby boomer who's picking up the newspaper to read the news, or the millennial who is engaging with my content on Instagram, or the Gen Xer who is deciding their next destination, including where do they want to study next on the basis of what's trending on Snapchat, I need to meet my customers where they are. The wonderful thing and the challenge and the opportunity both for services industry and the hospitality industry is that more than any other sector, the customer has to lie at the heart of the brand. And the customer experience doesn't just shape brands, it ensures their survival or demise. Now, this is nothing new. This is something that is as old as time itself, whether it's our tradition of Atiti Devo Bhava or the Greek tradition of Xenia, where actually guests and customers were protected by Zeus, the king of gods. We've always recognized the importance of the customer experience. The question is, where are the customers? Because we follow the customers. We don't expect them to follow us. As marketing was evolving, there have been different platforms which have emerged. So you had the so-called, till 3 years back also, there was talk of heritage marketing, which were essentially that you're looking at your outdoor marketing, you are looking at your traditional platforms, and you're looking at doing events, etc. And then there was a talk of digital marketing, that whether it is search engine marketing, whether it's social media, without which honestly nothing is possible. But today, it's all about the experience. So whether I am looking at services marketing, whether I'm looking at digital marketing, it's all about how do I bring these bits together into a harmonious whole to position myself before the guest, before the customer, and to say, I have a solution for your needs.
Actually, you have the world's most difficult job. I'll tell you why, right? Is if you go back 20, 30 years, right? 15 years, traditional marketing was there. We relied on all the other medias. The point is, you were captive to that media, right? So if you had a magazine or a newspaper, you're still a captive. Now, the fact that you don't have an attention of beyond 3 or 4 seconds, the question is, how do you hammer the brand in front of the customer and you retain his attention beyond 3 or 4 seconds? Because he is consuming literally 30 to 40 different brands in like under a minute, right? All he's doing is this. And how do you ensure now, right? So for me, that's difficult. I can't even begin to understand.
It is, you've hit the nail on the head, Kunal. Even 10 years back, we used to talk about the attention spans of a goldfish. Today, human beings have an attention span lesser than that of a goldfish, right? There's only one response to that, and that's something that we keep on refining: engage, engage, engage. While absolutely the attention spans have become limited, and of course the digital platforms have a huge role to play in that, but it's a two-edged sword. Digital, especially social, has also provided us with this wondrous, for the first time in human history, weapon of two-way engagement. For the first time, I'm not just talking down to my customers, they are talking back at me. So whether you're employing social listening effectively, how are you engaging with them, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that is honestly going to provide me all the insights I need.
I personally believe if your why and the customer's why they match, then that's a customer for you. Your story needs to, it's pretty much like a marriage, right?
Absolutely.
So, I've also done some digital marketing projects, and clients have come up to me and said, you know what, we want to make a 30-minute video or 10-minute video, and we want to do it on television. And coming to Anuradha's point, that's not where your audience is anymore. I say, why do you want to spend money on detailed videos and all of that when your audience is on Instagram and Facebook looking at 10 seconds and 15-second reels? I think, to her point, marketing in today's age, and especially I'm picking up on your topic, but marketing in today's age, the only way you can keep the audience engaged if you're using digital marketing to build a community. The moment you are able to build a community, the audience will engage with that community more and more. That's one of the
kind of goes back into the fact that you only can build a community if you engage and their content, your why and their why match, right? Otherwise, nobody's going to be into it.
So the platform is the king, and I'm going to digress a little bit over here because it's also the other unique opportunity / challenge for us over here is intergenerational marketing. And well, absolutely, while Gen X onwards, they're all digital first. But if I'm trying to reach out to the baby boomer luxury audiences or parents who are not digital first audiences, that television commercial, as long as the platform is correct, as long as I've chosen the channel I'm running it on, the magazine I'm running it on is correct, but again, it has to be reinforced by the community building. Communities have been around for a long time. It is in human nature. It's ingrained. Think of good old Harley Owners Group, right? The first community was built in an era where there was no digital, but till date, it is a case study in how to bring together communities to create the next generation of users.
Quick, tell us, how do you take all of this, right? And how do you now sensitize the students to all of this? Because eventually it needs to be plowed back to what you're facilitating, right? How does it happen?
I'm going to pick up on a very important word you just used, Kunal, sensitize. Because sensitivities, and over here I'm going to be entering a little bit into Nipun's territory as well.
She needs to sign a contract?
Okay.
Did you sign an NDA?
So this thing, he'll draft one up and I promise I will sign. I promise I will sign. Like, yeah, we're pals now. So this thing, right. So we're living in a world of constant information load, but we're also living in a world of different sensitivities. Now, the sensitization firstly begins in terms of understanding these intergenerational needs, also in understanding what's important for the consumers today. Top of the mind awareness in terms of sustainability, in terms of diversity and inclusion. These are not even conversations that were happening 5 years back. In the classroom, the module that we approach is a very, very industry first and a consumer first. Of course, they need a solid grounding in the basics and the principles. So what is segmentation? How do you reach out to different target audiences? But always there are two solid foundations that I follow in terms of my learning methodology. One is has to be based in the real world, real business situations. The second is dialogue. The wonderful thing is that our students, our young learners are a digitally native audience. And information is at their fingertips. They're already armed with that information. Channeling that information, helping them make sense of that information overload, helping them understand how is this going to help them, whether they go into careers in sales, for example, they still need to understand what's making the audience tick. What is it that they are expecting from us? The second part of the sensitivity is the challenges and the opportunities provided by new media and new technology. We all know AI has expanded incredible frontiers for us. Absolutely. But you also have a situation where, for example, authors are taking ChatGPT to the law courts because they've been accused of plagiarizing their life's work without seeking their permission. At times like this, and this is where, I think there are, again, and I have to commend the way we've brought all of these disciplines together, these interplay of competencies between, let's say, law and marketing to understand what are the legal issues before the adoption of new technology. The young learners are aware of the technology. It's my job to prepare them to use it before they step out into the world of work.
Tell me something. There's a little conflict in my head right now, right? And anyone can answer this. The fact is, the attention span has reduced, right? And it's just a generation thing, and that's fine. But then how do you take a serious topic like a project management? Because it requires careful planning, it requires meticulous planning. When you talk about a WBS, you must understand that. So how does this balance out with a generation perhaps who appreciate bite-sized information, bite-sized classes, vis-a-vis, let's say, project planning is initially it's about planning and then it's about execution, right?
It's interesting you asked that question, Kunal, because we were just having a conversation about adults' attention spans just before this conversation. See, adult attention spans are only 15 minutes, and these are young adults. If you give them long, boring PowerPoint presentations, they're going to go to sleep. No, there's no learning happening. It is just a download, and it doesn't work. So when I do presentations and classrooms, they are interspersed with activities. So you have to have 15 minutes of, let's say, theoretical academic discussion, and then you have to follow it up, reiterate the learning with a 15-minute activity. That's the only mode of activity which I've which has worked for my format in both corporates as well as educational institutions. And what that gives us is that nobody gets bored, everybody's engaged, and once you are following up with an activity and if people are doing it, learning and doing it themselves, they learn more than they would if you just give them a PowerPoint presentation.
I'm going to add to that. We keep talking about how there is a lack of attention span. I agree on that part, of course. However, I have a different take on it. Yes, they have a lack of attention span. We also have a lack of, right? However, when they see something which catches their attention, the kind of detailing that they get into, and it may be a very, very small thing, right? And we always look at these things in a very negative manner, but we associate the word research to be something very academic in nature. But a student who's 18-year-old or say 20-year-old, right? He or she is actually doing a lot of research, but in the area that they're interested in. For example, it could be just something like cars. Now, there could be a student who's interested in cars, and believe you me, they'll have so much knowledge on that. They could hold a session on it maybe. So it depends on what is holding their attention
for sure
span.
but let's say for a subject, to the point that if you are an early manager in the making, and project manager is important, personal brand is important, understanding yourself, understanding the customer, understanding the world outside and how the interplay works, understanding law is kind of really important, right? Because at the end of the day, he or she will be executing something like this. So do you believe that this generation also requires a pedagogy which resonates with them?
Totally. 100%.
Right? And it can't with whatever aids you're using.
So it's similar to marketing. So if I use that analogy, right? In marketing, you understand your target audience. When you're teaching or educating, your target audience is that young adult who's student, and that young adult would have different customer personas. Some would be interested in cars, somebody would be interested in houses, somebody would be interested in dresses. So if I have to teach them work breakdown structure, I'll teach them about work breakdown structure and then give them a project of preparing a work breakdown structure of how do you make a dress, or how do you make a car, or how, and everybody chooses, and it's their own interest area, but they're applying the knowledge they have learned. They're learning faster.
So if you do the string theory, it's very simple, right? Firstly, before the project happens, are your contracts in place? No, seriously.
It is.
Absolutely.
And once, let's say, the dress is made, how do you market it? Right? And then this whole...
In fact, that's exactly how it is. So if you look at the client life cycle, and if you go into especially in the consulting world, or let's say operations, when you're delivering outsourced operations for companies, or if you're a facility management firm which is delivering outsourced operations, what do? You get into a room, you negotiate the contract, you list down the deliverables, you said these are the milestones, this is how I'm going to pay, this is your monthly fee. Then what do? You assign a project manager. The project manager makes a project management plan out of the contract, and puts it on a timeline chart like a Gantt chart, starts executing it. Once it gets into a state where everything, your IT, your marketing, your operations, your people is set up, that when you go live in operations, and then operations is something you do over and over for the life of the contract. So that's exactly it is. And once the contract is over, you exit out of the contract, you terminate the contract, you hand over everything back to everybody, and all the resources go back to their departments. So that's the entire life cycle, and that's exactly what project management is.
I'm like kind of so excited. You know, when I listen to all this conversation, I feel like becoming a marketeer, project manager specialist myself. You know, practicing lawyer, not criminal law, but nonetheless. But it's so kind of interesting, right? Tell me something, Smeetha. If I kind of go back to you, we've pivoted, right? And we have pivoted several times, flipped over in the last 3 to 5 years. You've been here yourself, Anuradha. What makes us do these things over and over again? Something is working, we disrupt ourselves and we say, you know what, right?
We just want to be better.
Yeah. What is that?
We're always striving for excellence, Kunal. I think excellence is something which doesn't come easy, right? And there's one dialogue which I always give my students, right? That success, there's no elevator to it. You have to go one step at a time. You have to climb the step. It's the same for us. The same philosophy applies for us. We may be good, but there's something better. There's always going to be something better. And we have to keep striving for that, right? We may feel this is good now or excellent now, but tomorrow life changes. He talked about the VUCA world, and it is, right? The dynamics in the industry, the dynamics in the real world are changing every day. So, if we want to be excellent throughout and we want to be called excellent, then we need to evolve every day. So, if we don't keep disrupting what is our normal behavior today, we'll never reach there or we'll never be there.
So pretty much we started off with a life story, right? Yeah. If you had to time travel and go back, what would you tell your 15-year younger self?
That's very interesting. Considering what shortcomings and skills that I find myself with right now, I'll definitely take up some sort of management course, because as an independent practitioner, I have now come to realize there's a lot of sides of it that I have to handle. Finance, for instance, or project management. I mean, the conversation that we've been having, I am trying to understand. Oh, maybe I'm not handling my cases in a proper manner.
That also is a project management. Right? Yeah.
And marketing also. So lawyers are not allowed to advertise. But at the same time, there's a lot of subtle marketing, say through word of mouth going on. So a lot of these skills, I feel they're also important for lawyers. And if I had to go back to my 15-year-old self, I'll just tell myself to enroll myself in a management course before pursuing law.
One good way of lawyers marketing themselves is perhaps take the national stage and. But if I had to, now you have the hindsight of experience, the VUCA world. We've seen this Black Swan event, which is going to happen. God knows what's going to happen, right? Now we are embracing for, let's say, whatever future holds for us. What are the 3 or 4 skills do you think everyone should have?
Management, I don't know. I mean, for the last half an hour or so, I'm just feeling I'm not a competent manager at all. So I don't know what all skills would encompass within this, but I feel everyone needs to have some sort of, maybe not a formal training, but some sort of understanding of how it goes around.
So this should have been incorporated within the law curricula as well.
Maybe within the school curriculum.
Within the school curriculum, true.
Because, so as I said, I am just coming to realize now that these are probably the skills that I should have been equipped with. I'm sure there were a lot of other fields as well, where project management, I'm sure, goes about in no matter what profession you're in, you require it. So even prior to people starting their colleges, so definitely. At the same time, I would say there's some basic legal understandings as well that a lot of people need to have generally. So, for instance, consumer rights. A lot of people are not aware about what kind of rights they have. And the government is trying to come up with these advertisements and trying to market their schemes. Jago, Grahak Jago. So I think these basic principles, maybe not the laws themselves, but the legal principles, that has to be probably incorporated within the studies that they're undertaking.
Tell me something. Marketing, it scares me for the simple reason I know things are changing so rapidly, right? What are the 2, 3, 4 things, if at all there are 2, 3, 4, rather, you would perhaps inculcate in the student, because you do not know when the disruption is coming, right? Right? As you said, AI. I've always believed in it. I think we've all read this. Human with AI skills will replace humans without AI skills, right? Whether it's a marketeer, project management, law, anybody, right? But especially in the marketing aspect, is the consumer, and more discerning consumer, more aware consumer, and this barrage of products that are hitting the kind of consumer with AI completely changing the consumer behavior kind of a pattern, understanding their pattern. What are the 2, 3, 4 skills you think these graduates should have?
Number one on the list, that's a great question, Kunal. Number one on the list, I would say agility and flexibility, and I'm going to expand the scope of that. The flexibility is also of mindset. Mindset in terms of being a continuous learner. The era of you get your marketing degree and you practice for 30, 35 years is long gone. We have to continuously update ourselves. But that flexibility also needs to come in terms of understanding the points of view of others, because your consumer groups are not just constantly evolving, they're also increasingly diversified. When I started out in marketing, great brands stood behind great products. Today, enduring brands need to stand behind and represent great values. So that flexibility needs to come in understanding what are the rapidly evolving values of the world as well. Secondly, this is the era that we're entering where there is absolutely no room for tech shyness. Technology, AI, the metaverse, all of these are there to stay. And it's not just in terms of marketing. I get up in the morning, I get my news. Where am I getting my news? I'm catching up on my news online, right? My young students are catching up with the news on in shorts on their phones. I book an Uber to work, right? I am in the process, I'm answering my emails while I'm on my way to work. It's ingrained in our lives. So there's absolutely no scope for tech shyness. So please open your mind and open your horizons. Thirdly, soft skills have always been very essential. They are irreplaceable now, because those soft skills are now not just in terms of our engagement with our colleagues, but they're also absolutely essential for understanding how is our consumer thinking, keeping that open mind and that mode of engagement with them. The soft skills today also include things like understanding the needs of a very diverse audience and what diversity and inclusion means. Basics, and this is not just for marketing but for students overall, basics of the respect that is engendered by using the correct pronoun, and how important it is to use correct pronouns in addressing a colleague, a customer, even a family member. And keeping an open mind, because the single most important thing I would say is keep a very, very open mind, because the world is your playground. Very soon the universe will be, but it's a playground where the players are going to be coming from very diverse backgrounds, and we just have to learn to play together.
Excellent. So the tech exists, the platform exists, the tech is being disrupted, all platforms are being disrupted. 5 years from now, project management framework stays, but how does it evolve in your opinion?
So I think what is going to happen, and it's already started happening. The earlier what people used to do when they used to do project planning, there's something called a predictive project management, where you used to sit in a room, which is like the Japanese way of working. Sit in a room and plan out your project till the end in detail. So you used to plan out for what will happen next 1 year in detail, right? And then once you started executing, there was no going back to the drawing board. It was only execution, execution, execution. Now that will not work, because what you plan for next 1 month, the second month will become obsolete. So what is happening now, and that's where agile practices, agile fundamentals, values, principles come into the picture. And this came in after the advent of software, right? So the agile manifesto came up. So what is evolving now is that you do planning for all the you have a basic framework of what you want to achieve over a next 6 to 1 year period, but you execute in 2 to 4 weeks of time boxes. So you plan out the nearest deliverable in good amount of detail, and you execute, and you only execute that. And then when you come to this closer to the second milestone, you again unbox that and detail it out and execute.
Pretty
that.
much like a blockchain.
Right.
That's what you're saying, right?
Right.
Yeah, you take it,
Yeah.
one
Exactly.
block leads to the other block, leads to the third.
Right. And that is the advantage of that is it takes into the unpredictability of the environment, because when you're executing the next 2 to 4 weeks, the likelihood of things changing very drastically is very low. So your uncertainty goes down. When you're planning your second deliverable, you've already accounted for all the things which have changed in the last 2 to 4 weeks. So you plan better and more detail. So what is going to happen in next 5 years is, and the project manager is going to stay, but the project manager would become much more versatile and more productive with AI tools. So right now you have to make a project plan, and
that may take extra hours.
and extra hours, and you kind of follow it, update it, spend a lot of time in that administrative work. Then you might have an AI assistant who you just give him the parameters, that gives you the Gantt chart or the project plan, sends out emailers to everybody who needs to finish it. If they're not finishing the task on time, right now email goes tomorrow.
Also perhaps any weak link predicts any risk, mitigates
Yeah.
against those risks.
Right, and tomorrow AI might just start giving calls to the person that you have not done it.
Yeah.
So all of those things are going to evolve. So it's not that the project manager is going to go away anywhere. The project manager will become AI augmented in the next 5 years.
Smeetha, what next? What do you think?
I honestly don't know.
I like that answer.
That's
Neither do I.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
But we'll figure it out.
Of course, we will. Kunal, there's something I want to say here. We all decide based on our experiences, right? And we think we are doing the best that we can. And there's something called that false consensus effect. It's a cognitive bias that we have in our lives, right? Where we feel what we are thinking is right. However, we today realize that we are designing a hospitality management course from whose perspective? We think we are right? Because this bias actually tells you that you are actually associating with people who are like-minded, so you think you have the consensus. However, this time we've actually gone out, taken inputs from the industry. Who's our customer? We've taken inputs from actually our past students who've done our postgrad.
So
right? I'm much more confident today because I feel that I have somewhere down the line cut out a couple of biases of mine. Because we are a unit, right? So we are like-minded people. So we'll have consensus on a couple of things. However, we are not our customers, right? So I think that is one right step that we have taken. Taken feedback from our past students, present students, the industry who's going to actually take our students. So I think we've done something good and we've achieved something good.
Yeah. And that's pretty much in our philosophy as well. If you kind of look at it, and it just manifests the ISH way of life. The fact that what if you wake up in the morning tomorrow and you're irrelevant? That can happen, right? What if you're just irrelevant?
Yeah.
And that fear stokes, if that can happen to me, these students who are undergraduate are going to graduate after 4 years or after 1 year, to the fact that if you're giving them the lifetime value, after 5 years, it is that project manager with the AI and who's not risk averse.
Yeah.
Right? Are the ones who has to be that agile, and that is a mindset, that is a skill, right? That relevance keeps on going, keeps us going, at least as a kind of a team, right? And pretty much we disrupt our own thoughts. you get exhausted. I'm going to be very candid about it. I get exhausted because if I have more information, let's say I learned something from you today, why can't we incorporate it tomorrow? Right? And why should I wait? Because that's the agile world, right?
Yeah.
In your VUCA world, it's not going to wait for another orbit to happen and they say, I'll do it day after tomorrow, because you could become irrelevant the very next day. So, that is the thing which kind of drives ISH, kind of keeps on going and keep on going.
So what ISH is doing, it, if I put a technical term to it, it's called rapid prototyping. So what you're doing is you've got together the industry experts together. You've given a broad framework. You've not detailed it out to the last moment, and you're starting the batch. And as the batch progresses, the feedback has been incorporated from the industry, all the customers, both the internal customers, external customers, and they're going to be feedback every month which is coming from the program.
And
Absolutely.
you as an expert, and let's say you are in Germany somewhere, and you get exposed to perhaps a mechanism of project management which perhaps you hadn't thought about even after 20-30 years. And you say, geez, I'm going to put this back. If you're putting it back in your practice, it needs to come in real time to my curriculum.
Yeah.
It can't be any other way, because otherwise these guys will be 2 notches irrelevant by the time they graduate.
We were having the exact same conversation, Nipun and I, outside the room. We said, our curriculums, by the time a student gets into a college, let's say in a graduate program, undergraduate program, we teach them things which were written 10, 15 years ago in a textbook. And by the time they get out, they're already irrelevant. And that's why I think ISH is doing a fantastic job of making sure whatever relevance you can bring to the curriculum by getting the industry experts and with their amalgamation of people who are already in the system. So it kind of gives the diversity to the program, which helps. I'm 100% confident it'll give the students a much more head start in their lives once they graduate from this program.
And keeps us also on the toes, because you are coming with more information. We do not know about that.
Yeah.
So it's like you're fine tuning us every single day, because you are practitioners out there.
Yeah.
And hence can it work.
Yeah.
I think it was a beautiful conversation. Right? Thank you so much, Mr. Lawyer. Right? And Mr. Project Management Specialist, Ms. Marketeer, Dean Smeetha.
Thank you.
Lovely. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for I think it was a beautiful conversation with our guests. And stay tuned for the next episode. Bye-bye.